Welcome to the next example that we are going to understand, where we will now focus on the next communication methodology that we can use in MCP. Now we are going to understand SSE, which stands for server side events. So far, the examples that we have understood are using STDIO, which is the basic default communication channel for developing the local MCP servers. But in this example, we are going to use two different libraries. One is Uvicorn and second is SSE Starlet, where SSE Starlet provides SSE support for Starlet based apps, and Uvicorn is another package that we are going to use, which helps us to run the ASGI app. What is ASGI app? We will look practically, and it is used for handling HTTP and long-lived SSE connections, and it helps us to perform the operations for transporting MCP over HTTP SSE, which serves the MCP messages endpoint and the SSE endpoint, which we are going to refer. So these are the two important packages that we are going to use over here. The approach is same. We must have i- installed these application libraries using PIP. Now let's look into this example. I am going to utilize the same example of a to-do manager, but this time in a different channel that we are going to use for pushing the data, right, using SSE. Now let's look into the code. So FastMCP we have used in many examples. We are using it, and here we have used FastMCP server HTTP, and we are importing create SSE app, which we are going to use for creating the SSE app instances. Here we are importing Uvicorn, right, which runs the ASGI apps. We are importing MCP types for resource and text content, and JSON and OS module for operations for reading and writing. So here the first step is, like, we are creating the fast MCP server named todo MCP SSE. This is our to-do file. This is the internal helper which we have already looked into for performing the read operation from the JSON file. This is the write operation internal method that we have created for writing the writing the data, writing the to-do items inside the JSON file. And here we are exposing the tools that we have looked earlier for adding a to-do, listing the to-do, and marking the to-do as done. So it's same that we have used already, but here the things are little bit different. Here we are creating the SSE app. Now this is building the ASGI application, which stands for asynchronous server gateway interface, which is a Python standard. And here we are declaring the message path, which is the HTTP endpoint for message exchange, and we are creating the SSE path, which is the SSE endpoint for real-time streaming. And here the instance of MCP server that we have created is associated over here, so it will help us to create long-lived streaming connection, which is used by SSE. Here how we are actually creating the entry point for this MCP server through FastMCP is like, we are using uvicorn.run. We are sending the instance of the create SSE app, right? It must be run by the ASGS server, example Uvicorn, and we are running it on localhost on port number 7000. Okay, so these are the requirements, and this is the approach that we are going to use for performing the operations of to-do manager by exposing different tools, right? Here you can see earlier we were using app.run, right, for stdio communication pattern, and here we are using the uvicorn for running the ASGI MCP based server. Okay, now to run this we will need a terminal. and it will automatically open the virtual environment, and here you will need to execute the command Uvicorn to do manager server. Now this to do manager server SSE is the name of the MCP server that we have mentioned over here. You can see the name of the file is to do manager server SSE, right? And app that we need to run, host is this and port is this, and here we are running it. So Uvicorn is running on this 127.0.0.1 port. Next is I have already configure the MCP server. You can see to do manager SSE, and you can see the URL on which this respective MCP server is running is on the same localhost and 7000 port. Here you can see SSE is the endpoint name that we have defined over here in the to do manager SSE when creating the respective server. Let me show you again. Here you can see the SSE path is SSE, which is the endpoint for real-time streaming. And if you go to cursor, you can see this to do manager SSE is disabled. You can enable it only after that this respective endpoint is running through Uvicorn. If you run it, the tools would be identified, right? It will work the same way. The only difference is it is going to use SSE over here. So let's say list my to-dos. So it will call the respective tool from our MCP server. Yes, it has identified called list to-dos. Here it is reading this this JSON file, right? todos.json. See over here. Let's add a new to do. Take dog for a walk. It should call the add to do tool that we have defined, right? So it has identified the tool. You can see this respective take dog for a walk to do item is added, and it is showing you have 3 to dos now. So this is how we can use SSE with the client here cursor AI for server client communication through event streaming on SSE. And if we think about the real time examples of when to use the SSE communication channel, so example is like live task, job monitor. We can create a data processing pipeline, a real-time chat MCP server, stock tracker, weather tracker, and for example MCP event hub for multiple agents communication. So this is how we can create a MCP server which runs on SSE with the help of Uvicorn. Thank you for understanding this example. Stay tuned, we will see more examples with other communication channels with MCP.